Okay, well, even though our attendees are growing a little bit, we can at least get started with some introductions. So let me stop my screen share. So hello everyone and welcome to today's session, Family Portraits 101. So today we'll be learning how to retouch like a pro. I'm Sarah. I'm the marketing manager at IQ. I have Kristina Sherk with me. She will be giving you a demo and walking you through her workflow when it comes to portrait retouching. Kristina is one of the most well-known photographers and retouchers in the Washington, D.C. area. We're super excited to have her here with us. She's also an amazing mom, so we decided to combine her expertise for today's session. So she'll tell you a little bit about that in a little bit once we start. But before we get started, I wanted to cover a few things. So like I mentioned before, a recording of this webinar will be available. I will send it out to all of the registrants. In that email will also be some special webinar pricing to purchase Perfectly Clear. And if you already own Perfectly Clear, then there's some special pricing for Kristina's amazing preset packs that she's created. So keep an eye out for that email. And then lastly, we would love to hear from you. So we are leaving a little bit of time at the end to answer some questions. So there should be that little Q&A section on your screen. So if you have any questions, then feel free to write them in there, and then we will cover those at the end. And I see a few more people have joined us, so welcome. I will now turn this over to Kristina, and she can share her screen and show you an awesome demo.
All right. And screen sharing. Can you tell me where that is?
It should be at the bottom of your
the big green button.
Yes, that says screen share.
All right, so here we go.
Perfect. I can see your screen.
Right, you all see all of my family images that I have compiled over the last day or two for this. I know some of them are portraits, but we actually went out yesterday and I did some photos of my daughter here. So we're going to be dealing with that for one of our demos. But I want to just start by talking a little bit about Perfectly Clear and why I particularly love working with Perfectly Clear. So let's go ahead and go into the interface. And when I'm using Perfectly Clear, I'm usually entering and exiting through Lightroom. So what I'll do is I'll select the photo, and I can select one photo or I can select many photos. And you can right click on that image and choose Edit In, and then choose Perfectly Clear right there. Perfectly Clear Complete. And whenever you are working with a raw image, Lightroom does not give you the capacity or the option to make destructive changes to a raw image. And so for that reason, you always want to choose to edit a copy. And you can see here that, you know, your other options are actually grayed out. How does that zoom look, Sarah? Does that come across okay?
Yes, the zoom looks great. It looks like someone said that there's a little bit of an echo. I'm not really getting any, but I am muting myself now. But yes, I can see everything perfectly.
Cool. I will try to make my voice as less echoey as possible, but it might just be my studio, unfortunately. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and choose Edit, and that's gonna bring us into our Perfectly Clear dialog box. And you can see that it actually does create a TIFF file of that exact image right there. So that's really useful because you're never gonna make any destructive changes to the image itself. Gotta love it. Gotta love technical difficulties.
I think Zoom also kind of adds to that. It doesn't let things load as quickly as they should.
And I've, been working on this for the last 4 hours. There we go. 4 hours with no issues. Gotta love it. Okay, so we've got an image here, and we're in our perfectly clear workspace. And so what I really, really love about the workspace is it's very similar to a bunch of other things that we're used to using. So for example, we have our area up here where we have our navigator window, and the navigator window is just going to show us where we are in our image. So if, for example, we're zoomed in to 80% zoom up here, you can figure out where the area is of your image that you're looking at using the navigator window right down there. And then we have our presets. We are going to be spending most of our time looking at our presets today. Not only some of the ones that are that come by default, but also some of the ones that we are going to create custom today. So a lot of our time is going to be spent in this box right here. And you can see that if you open up the disclosure arrow, you can actually see the different effects that these presets will apply to your overall image if you want it. The next thing that we have is our looks down here. Now, I'm not usually somebody that uses a lot of looks. If you're looking for consistency with your images, definitely check those out in terms of if you have a specific look, to your images, you can save one of those and apply it to all of your images for your website so that all of your work looks consistent, So for some people who have like a style, that would be something to do. So for the moment, we are going to go ahead and close our navigator window to basically expand the area that we want to use. And then the other thing we're going to do is close our looks as well, which is going to really expand out our presets area right here on the left. And then along the bottom, you'll see a film strip for any images that you have open and perfectly clear at the moment. And you can see that right now we only have one image open. And then along the top, you have like a quick access area with little icons for whichever preset folder you have open. So for example, if you were working on like if you were working on like outdoor images, right? The great outdoors would be a good one to open up. But then also what you can do is if you'd rather just keep this entire pane closed, you can come up here and say, I know that I only use the outdoors, the great outdoors presets. So let me just have those along my top, okay? And then I have more space down here to work on my image. So that's something you can do. So however you work is going to be, it's going to be customizable for the work that you do, I guess would be what I'm trying to say. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. And so a little bit about Perfectly Clear Complete. I have this, my first thing that I'm going to talk about here is work smarter, not harder. That's definitely going to be my go-to quote for today. It's this program allows you to really do one-click editing, and not only one-click editing in a very stringent capacity, but one-click editing and then having intelligent AI technology on the back end look at your image, decipher what's in your image, and apply the right preset for whatever is going on in your image. And that's why I love this software so much. On top of that, we are talking about faces today. We're talking about images with people. And so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the beautifying corrections that we have. And those are the things that I'm really going to spend the most time on. You do have some perfect portrait presets that come by default with the program, but then you also have some portrait modifications in your Perfectly Clear Essentials. And so what we have here in the Perfectly Clear Essentials section is going to be Intelligent Auto, which is a new preset. We have Intelligent Auto plus red eye removal. And those two are going to be two of your newer ones. Then the ones that I want to point out the most are going to be Beautify, Beautify Plus, and also this one down here, which is Intelligent Auto Classic. This was the original Intelligent Auto. And the reason why I want to pick those three is because if you have those set on your image, you can see over here that those three, if it sees a face inside your image, it's going to find that face. Sorry, I guess there's lots going on outside. I hope you can hear all the sirens and stuff. So if it sees that face, what it's going to do is it's going to apply some beautifying corrections. And depending on which one you're using, there are different beautifying corrections that are going to be applied. So for example, with the Beautify, you have 7 different beautifying corrections that are going to be applied to the image. So you can see, you found your face up here, and then it's going to do the red eye removal and the enhanced eyes and the dark circles, and then down here in the skin section, let's close up the face section for a minute. Down here in the skin section, you can see it does perfectly smooth. So it smooths the skin. It does infrared removal, and then it does shine removal. Some people don't realize this, but since Perfectly Clear is a software that was created only 15 years ago, it was built from the ground up for digital photography only. And so a lot of the original editing programs that we are used to using, some of the bigger names, they actually were created for film photography. And then it was interpolated, on the back end math to create the look for digital photography. So that means everything has been translated from film to digital. Well, that's not the case for Perfectly Clear, Complete. Sorry, it's a mouthful to say that sometimes. So one big issue I want to just bring this point home. One big issue for digital photography is that the sensors are so powerful that they actually pick up infrared in the skin tones. So to be able to check this box to remove infrared redness from your skin is a huge plus. And it's not necessarily something that would be as big of an issue if you were shooting film, right? So that's just an added bonus. So driving this point home, we've got Beautify, we have Beautify Plus, and then we also have the Intelligent Auto Classic. Those 3 are going to apply beautify corrections to not just one face, but any face that it sees within your image, okay? So part of the reason why I love Perfectly Clear Complete. Hello. Okay, so a little bit of background. I did talk about the fact that it was created 15 years ago, but I do want to talk about what they've been doing for the last 15 years, because some of you may have just cottoned on to Perfectly Clear as a program and as an editing program. And so the reason why you haven't necessarily heard about this specific program is because they've focused most of their research and development and relationships on the back end of photo labs. So any printing lab that you've seen, any lab. So anytime you guys click that auto button on any image that you are uploading to be auto enhanced. That's Perfectly Clear's software. It's ridiculous that there is a software out there that processes 30 million photos a day and 11 billion photos annually that we are not aware of. So for me personally, thinking, oh my gosh, like that's kind of insane. It's because they haven't been focused on photographers as their clients before. But what that means for you is that you have the ability to have years and years of trial and error at your fingertips, okay? This software is not clunky. It's not, it has literally had 11 billion photos go through this technology every single day. And so what that means for you is that it's going to be incredibly powerful in terms of its AI technologies and what it's able to do to your images. So that's really the power behind it. And that's why I love this specific software so much. And I have a quote on here that basically says, all you have to do is ... nothing, because when your images are processed through Perfectly Clear, it's going to do all of its tweaks to your images without you having to do a thing. And that's what's really fabulous about this software. For example, if we go to beautify any face, we're going to have all of these different facial tweaks applied automatically. What did we do to get these results? We clicked one button. We clicked on the Beautify preset. So out of the box, Perfectly Clear has serious potential with just its presets. And not only with its essential presets, but also if you are a lover of some of their original presets, you also have the option for going into the legacy presets and finding all of your old favorites. For example, some of my favorites are going to be the eyes presets. Where is my, there's a eyes coffee one in here. Oh, raccoon eyes, that's a good one. And morning coffee. You can see how the eyes were opened by using morning coffee. Just a little bit of eye opening can really do wonders. And then those under eye circles. I know that when I think I created some eyes presets for Perfectly Clear and some skin presets as well. And I have no idea if I created morning coffee or not because
you do have a you have a preset pack, I believe, all about eyes, and that's an add-on that we do have.
Okay, good. All right. So maybe I didn't create morning coffee, but it is one of my favorites because I empathize very much with needing your eyes to be opened and your under eye circles to be removed, considering both of my kids had me up all night last night. So when you said awesome mom, let's take that with a grain of salt, please. Yeah, so these are the reasons why I'm loving this. So I talked a little bit about the layout. We have our navigator, we have our presets area, which we've expanded out. We have our looks down here, and then we have our quick access for whichever preset pack we want up on the top. And so of course, we're probably not going to use legacy, or we're probably not going to use the great outdoors, but we can go back to our Perfectly Clear essentials. All right. And that's going to give us, you know, some of the originals and the new updated originals as well. And then over here on the right, we have our advanced sections. We've got our histogram. And then one thing that I did want to say is if you do nothing on the right-hand side, if you are just one of those people that says, I don't want to go in and figure out what every single slider does. I don't have time for that. That's perfectly okay. That's why the program was created. What you can do is you can just play around with this one thing over here, and that's going to be the strength slider. So any of the sliders that you see, any of the presets that you have on the left, you can stick with those. So we could go to, like, let's say, let's choose Beautify Plus as a default starting point, okay? And then what we can do is we can either take this effect up to 200% or down to 0%. Whoa, 200% takes everything up, and then 0% takes everything completely away. So that's one really nice thing about using these presets over here. And then just if you do one thing in the advanced section, take a look at that strength slider, because it's going to make each one of these presets customizable for the image that you're working on. All right. So I talked about what you get right out of the box. The last thing that I want to just mention about the program is that these aren't your regular run-of-the-mill presets over here. And what I mean by that is that presets are a little bit like a one-trick pony. Meaning, if you have a preset, it's always going to apply 50% added contrast. It's always going to apply plus 20% increased vibrance, for example. When you're using presets in the world of Perfectly Clear Complete, it's a variable preset, meaning the preset is going to take into account the age, the ethnicity, the gender of the person in the photograph, and it's going to create a custom application of that preset to your image. And so that's why I really, really love working with the presets within that capacity. So that is a bit of the overall of the reason why I work with this program every single day. And so let's get into the nitty gritty. Whenever I am working in Perfectly Clear, what I usually like to do is I like to start with a preset. And most of the time that's going to be Beautify. At that point, let's come over here. I just want to turn, we'll leave tone on. We'll leave some of the tone settings on because it's just some overall light diffusion and that kind of thing to our image. And what I do want to point out is the face section, and that's going to be down here. So whenever there is a face that's registered in your image, and this can be one face or it can be multiple faces, and the next example that I show you is going to be a situation where there are multiple faces in an image, so just sit tight for a moment. What you want to do is you want to just turn this on really quickly and see where the controls are kind of hitting your image. So when you see this yellow pinpoint, what I used to do is I used to put this yellow pinpoint over the middle of the eye because I thought that that's kind of where the best place would be for this. I was mistaken. What I found that makes the eyes, all of the portrait retouching work better is when this pinpoint is actually right above the iris along the lash line on both eyes. Okay? It just, I don't know what it is, but watch what happens. I'm going to turn my dark circles all the way up for an example. And then I'm going to move this pinpoint. If I move it over the iris, you can see that the dark circles is a little bit lower right here. Well, that isn't really the area where the dark circles are. As soon as I put this right and I split the difference between the iris and the lash line, I just find that see how that lined up right underneath the under eye area? That's what I'm talking about. So I know that it looks like an iris, which is very counterintuitive, but this is just a power user tip. If you are going to be using this program, if for some reason something's not lining up, try doing that, and then everything is going to just work so much more beautifully for you. And just to turn off the facial points, you can go ahead and just click this checkbox over here to turn them off so that we can move on. And then we have a couple different eye, oh, my dark circles are still all the way up, so we'll pull those down. Because let's face it, she's the one keeping me up all night, every night. So she obviously isn't tired, right? It's just mom. It's just mom. But you can see what is going on here just straight out of the box with clicking one preset. All right, and I think that this is pretty significant. So we found our face, right? Okay, good. We aligned our face. 90% of the time, the alignment of the face in the image is going to work perfectly. But what I need to do as an educator is teach you what happens when the software doesn't work perfectly. And so I'm not like a fair weather teacher. I need to teach you what happens when it doesn't work straight out of the box for you. Okay, so we don't have any red eye here, so we can turn our auto red eye removal off. And then our eye enhance, let me zoom in a little bit more so that we can see and zoom in on this face. So our eye enhance, what I really love about the eye enhance is that only the areas of contrast are really going to be sharpened, and not the areas that you don't want overly sharpened. So if I zoom in even more, and just for this explanation, I'm going to actually take the eye enhance all the way up to 100. You can see how while the iris is sharpened and the lashes are sharpened and the eyelid is sharpened, the eye whites are not as sharp as the rest of the eye that you see. And it's extremely helpful for this type of thing when you're dealing with a smart sharpen. And obviously I would never suggest somebody go to 100% of the eye enhance. But when it comes to the irises or the work on eyes, anything that can be done to speed it up is going to be incredibly beneficial and helpful for you in the long run. Because remember, we're spending a lot of time on this image today, but if you remember what my Lightroom looked like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to spend this amount of time on all of these images from our shoot, right? And I shouldn't. So we're going to get there in a moment. What we need to do is we need to create the best of all of these sliders, and then we're going to create a preset from that. We're going to create our own custom preset, and then we can take that preset and process all of those images through Lightroom using the application of the preset that we create. And I know that that's crazy, but just bear with me because we're going to be doing that as we move on. So I'm going to gloss over some of these other sliders really quickly. So we do have the under eye slider, which is literally my favorite slider that Perfectly Clear Complete has ever created. I literally think they caught lightning in the bottle when it comes to that one. And the reason behind that is because you still retain all of the under eye texture under the eyes while the color is mitigated and the shadows are mitigated. Now, in order to do that, you wouldn't even literally be it's not possible to do that, to protect the texture under the eyes It's not possible yet to do that in Lightroom, so you would have to take this photo into Photoshop, and then you would have to run frequency separation, layer setup, and then modify just the color underneath the texture. And nobody has time for that. So just take my word for it and just use the one slider that we have right here, okay? That's one of the most powerful things that I love personally about Perfectly Clear. So then we have teeth whitening. We can turn that off because her mouth is closed, but we do have the option for lip sharpening. And so we can add a little bit of sharpening to the lips. You can see that right here. And then as we pull our before and after, it's just really nice, especially if you do have some skin smoothing applied to your image, to bring back some of the sharpness within those lips as well. So that's an added bonus. Face contouring, let me just, as a caveat, let me just talk a little bit about face contouring because I know it's a bit of a sticky subject. The way the math is written on the face contouring slider in Perfectly Clear is some people photograph faces with wide angle lenses. And when you do that, there is distortion in the wide angle lens, and that creates native distortion in the facial features. This is not a slider for going overboard with and going crazy with and creating doll-like features, okay? So please don't do that. You can see that you have to actually take the slider almost to 100% for it to do anything because it's a smart slider, because it's taking into account who is actually in the image, all right? So if I take this all the way down and then I incrementally click it up and increase it, you will see no difference as I increase this face contouring slider because it's relative. So only at 55%, when I got to 55%, only did it then start to modify that jawline on her. And it's ever so slight because she doesn't need it. She's a baby, all right? So for this example, turning it off, totally fine, but I would be remiss if I didn't warn you guys for face contouring. It's something to be used in its minimal capacity when you're shooting with the wrong lens and you say, well, I'm not gonna lose this picture because I only have a wide angle lens. I'm gonna take the photo and then I can fix it in Perfectly Clear. So then we have some skin smoothing options here, and I love the stuff that we have here. I worked with them quite extensively on the blemish removal slider specifically, and it has grown leaps and bounds since it's had some renovations done to this specific slider, and I love what it does now. And you also, like I was mentioning earlier, you have the infrared removal for removing that redness, and then you have your perfectly smooth. And so for this example, really quickly, what I want to show is one big difference that you have. But for this example, I am going to take the perfectly smooth up to 100% for visibility sake only. So if I take this perfectly smooth all the way up, you can see that the smoothing has been applied to the face. Now you have the option for where do you want this smoothing to be applied? Do you want it to be applied only to the face, or do you want it to be applied to all skin tones in the image, i.e. the entire body? So if you have a portrait going on, you could do face only if it's zoomed in, but if you are a little bit wider with your shot, you can choose to change this smoothing area from face only to full body. And that's going to immediately apply the skin smoothing. You can see on her arm there. You can see how the skin smoothing was applied to the entire body as well. Okay, now, of course, I will take my perfectly smooth slider all the way down to where it looks realistic. And And that's a much, much better look for this image. Lastly, within our skin section, we do have a shine removal option here. And I'm just going to pull this all the way up so that you guys can see what it does. Okay, we're going to remove that shine. And my one caveat for shine removal is if you are going to turn it on, please keep in mind that we have a three-dimensional object, which we have photographed here. If you go way too extreme on the shine removal slider, what you're doing is you're basically flattening the illusion and the depth of the face. So now it doesn't look like a 3D object anymore. So definitely keep the shine removal low for this kind of thing. So I just wanted to make sure that I touched on that before moving forward. Now, let's go ahead, let's zoom out since I'm happy with the facial changes that we've been able to make. And I want to add a graduated filter to my image. I want to do a circular one because I only want it to be applied to the background, but you do also have the option to flip if your gradient, your radial gradient or your linear gradient is being applied to the inside section or the outside section. So you do have those options. And then let's go ahead and decrease the exposure for our gradient. And then we can really modify the shape of this radial vignette quite well. And it's very easy to visualize as you're working on this vignette. And I really like what you're able to do here. You're able to increase the feather, or you're able to make it a really sharp edge. I like my feathers really nice and soft. If, let's say you didn't want to center it on the middle of her jacket, maybe you want to center it on her face, the vignette on her face, you can go ahead and click the place center button, and then you get this little red dot that shows up. At that point, you can relocate this vignette so that it's over a more custom area. And then I don't like how dark it is on the suitcase down here. So I can play around with just the blacks for the vignette area. So I can pull that back a little bit. And the last thing that I want to do is activate my color temp slider here. And I want to just add a warming effect to the background slightly. So our before and our after, we were able to make a lot of improvements on the skin, on the under eyes, on the eye sharpening, on the sharpening of the lips, and then also adding a vignette to the background. And so I'm happy with this result. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as my own preset now. So I can come to this tiny little gear up here. We can click add or edit a preset, and that will bring up a little box for us that says, that starts with what it was. You started with Beautify and then you edited it. Well, I can come up with a better name than that. So let's call this toddler toddler time. I don't know. And then we can add a little bit of an icon to it. My one request for Perfectly Clear is going to be to update the icons that we have going on down here. I think they are hilarious.
Agreed.
Did you say agreed?
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah. They're hilarious and I love them. I want you to keep the original ones because they are so like 1980s and it's fabulous, but maybe doing a couple more, a couple newer ones would be awesome. And then you can give yourself a little bit of a reminder down here about what this preset is. Vignette plus facial retouching. We can go ahead and save that preset, and that's going to save the preset into the My Preset section, okay? Because I told it to save into there. So now we have our toddler time. All right, so Why is this important? I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to go back to my Lightroom, and then I want to show you how I batch automate this. So I have a bunch of different images. All right, so I have multiple images from this shoot, and you can see that I'm not including the TIFF. All right, that was just created for me during the editing process, during the process of creating that preset. So I have all of these other images. I'm going to choose to go File, and then I'm going to choose Export. Whoops. I'm going to choose Export from down here. And then there's a couple different settings that I'm going to do that I'm going to change. First is going to be, I'm going to change the export to from hard drive, which is probably what it's set out for you, to perfectly clear complete version 3. And then you can see that you have different options within your box here. The first thing is, well, what preset do you want to apply to all of these images? Well, thank you. You can choose from the system presets that are there, and you can see all of them in this list. So if you really loved Beautify Plus, for example, you could go ahead and choose that custom preset from the list. But you can also choose presets that you create. So let's go ahead and use user presets, and let's choose toddler time. We're going to hide the processing of the perfectly clear window. And then what we're going to do is we're going to save these back to the same folder as the original photos. And then we're going to click to add them to this catalog. And I do not need them in a subfolder. So we're going to add them back to this catalog, and we can rename them to, let's see, let's edit this. Let's say file name underscore PC edit. And then underscore, no, that's fine, PC edit. And we're gonna go ahead and hit done. So this is what the new file names will look like. We have our original file name and then the PC edit. We're gonna choose JPEG, we'll make sure that it's high quality. Now we're gonna go ahead and click export. And so what this is going to do is it's going to take each one of these, and behind the scenes of your computer, it's going to apply the exact same preset that we created on our first image, and it's going to apply those to all of the images in the set that I've told it to apply them to. Okay, isn't that great? All right, so it's doing its magic. We're gonna wait for it to do its magic, and then we'll review it super quick. And then I wanna show you an image with multiple faces in it so that we can move on to that. And then I hope we will have time for questions. It's amazing how long-winded I can be when I get on a roll. It's crazy. Are there any questions while I'm waiting and taking a drink of water?
Yes, we do have some questions. This was in the beginning. Do you leave it set to the default settings, TIFF, 240 DPI, etc.? Is there enough?
When it's creating the virtual copy, I think that's what they mean.
I think so.
Yeah, for the most part, I do, because it's only a stopgap in the middle of the thing. And currently the defaults, if it's out of TIFF, if it's using TIFF as its default, then the reason why it's doing that is because that is the file format that's going to give you the highest quality image during your image process. And they know that, and that's why they chose that as the default. So yeah, that would be, yes, I would leave it as the default. All right, so it hasn't processed all of them, but the nice thing is that I could easily have stepped up from the computer and gone and walked the dog, or gone and made a cup of coffee or, you know, what have you. So if we look at our few that have processed, oops, I have a selection on. Oh, yay. Okay, it's finished. So the export of Perfectly Clear Complete was successful. So we can go ahead and press OK. So now we'll see the original. You can see how thrilled my daughter was for making me making me take her out. So there's one, there's two, there's three. There's our original, which we do not have the, oh, there it is. There's three, and there's four. Okay, so that's one easy way. I know that a lot of people would say, well, you can just pull them all into Perfectly Clear, and you can choose to apply the preset that you've created to all. And that's very well and good if you have like under 10 or 15 images to process. But if you have 20, 50, 100 different images to beautify, to run through beautifying corrections, you do not want to pull them all into Perfectly Clear. You want to have it process in the back end. So we'll take this nice family photo that I have here with multiple faces, and we want to take this into our Perfectly Clear Complete dialog box. So right click, choose Edit In, Perfectly Clear version 3. Perfectly Clear Complete. And again, we're going to edit a copy. And wait for my computer to think. Oh my. Oh, I do want to say that this has nothing to do with the program, and this has everything to do with my very limited computer storage that I have at the moment, and the fact that I'm also running 3 screens off of a laptop. So I guarantee if you are using this software, it is not going to be this slow on your computer. This has to do with my computer. So yes, definitely keep that in mind. All right, so the last thing that I want to just kind of bring your attention to and point out is that sometimes what's going to happen is not every single face is going to be registered in an image. So you can see here that the program found mom and found the daughter, but it did not find the dad. So what we can do is we can choose to manually add a face. So if we click on this button, it's going to bring up the adjustment points for the faces that we already have. And then it actually gives you this handy dandy note of what you need to do next. Click the left eye and then the right eye in a face that was not automatically selected. So we can go ahead, and I'm not going to do this zoomed in because I don't want it to freak out on me. So remember my little tip about the yellow placement, the middle of where the upper lid meets the eye in the middle. Oops, you know what I did? I clicked the right eye before the left eye. All right, manually add a face. Let's try this again. I got distracted. Top of the left eye, top of the right eye along the lash line, and there's our face. All right, so it came up. Now you can see here that I just want to maybe improve on this guy over here. Like I said, spinning beach ball of death just seems to be the theme for today in my life. Do we have a question while this is going crazy?
Yes, we can. Let's see here. When you are retouching, do you create a new preset every time?
No, I don't, because most of the time I'm processing high volume, and I'm actually gonna quit out of this and then we'll start it over again.
It probably has something to do with Zoom as well. We always have an issue when running things with Zoom.
Yeah, I've been actually incredibly surprised at how fast the response time is on this specific program, because of how much experience it has processing files. So this actually has nothing to do with the program itself, like I said, and has everything to do with my computer. Because I'm on the second image that was created, I'm going to choose Edit Original, because this is a copy of my original. This is my original, and this is the copy that was originally created for me. So I'm going to choose that one. All right, so we've got our two faces over here. Let's go ahead and manually show and adjust the manual control points, and then we're going to manually add a face. We're going to add Dad right here. And now we're going to hit apply. And what that will do is it's going to add the third face to our list of people. All right, so that's what's really going to help in your editing program. And I'm just tweaking these a little bit. And sometimes it's a little bit more helpful to zoom in, especially whenever you're dealing with skin per se. You really do want to be not completely zoomed out for this specific situation. And one thing that I did want to point out again is if you are in a situation like this where it's extremely dappled light and you are struggling with hot spot, you can, in this situation, take your shine removal slider and increase it a little bit more. And maybe we take the perfectly smooth up here, and because we're dealing with 3 different people, take that down a little bit so that it's not as extreme. And then we'll change it from full body, we'll change it back to face only. All right, so those would be the changes that I make. I know that it's hard to see the changes because I have these silly points visible, so we can turn those off. And now if we come down here to this little arrow in the bottom of the left-hand side, you see it right down here. What you can do is you can pull and you can see the differences that were applied to your image. So the sharpening of the eyes, the sharpening of the lips, the under eye adjustments, and that can all be done on all of the different faces that we're working with. You see how good the under eyes look on him? I mean, he needs a little bit of help because of the hat that's casting a shadow over his eyes. So that's really nice. And then the under eyes are definitely softened on her. The overall skin tone has been improved. I think the lip sharpening is up just a little bit too much on all 3 of them. So I can come down to my lip sharpening over here. And you have the option of decreasing the slider or changing the type of sharpening math that is applied. So you can do both. All right. So I think that that's pretty much it. We do have some bundle stuff that's going on today. And if you are not a member, if you do not have Perfectly Clear yet, what you can do is all of my presets that I have created have been bundled together with Perfectly Clear Complete. And you're getting an $182 value for $99 today. So is that more than almost 50% off for the whole thing?
Are you really going to make me do math?
Well, Well, I definitely can't do math right now.
It's almost 50%, yes.
It's
So
close.
it's a really, really great deal. And if you already own Perfectly Clear, we are doing a preset bundle minus the software. So that will be going out in the follow-up email that I will be sending with also the webinar recording.
Cool. Yeah, so any other questions? So that's pretty much it for me today. What do you guys got for me?
All right, let's see. Like I said, everyone, we are accepting questions. So if you put them in the little Q&A section, then we can take a few minutes and answer these. So one thing that I've seen is if you can combine presets. So I'll start that one off a little bit. If you are just clicking through presets, then they will not go on top of each other. Now I can't think of the right word, but they won't layer, but that's just so that you can go in and mess around with them a little bit. So I don't know, Christina, if you have a recommendation for if you did want to combine presets, but I recommend if you do think that you need to combine presets to mess around with the slider bars on the right side of the screen like you've been doing.
Yeah, so what you would do is you would go through the sliders on the right and just basically write them down on what happens on one preset that you like and what happens on the other preset that you like. And then you would manually change all those sliders, turn everything else off, and then you would come back over here to your little gear symbol and you would choose to add a new preset and make your own.
Completely agree. Here we have, do you have any recommendations on taking pictures of your kids? My photos definitely do not come out like that.
Bribe them. that would be my, she got a nice big ice cream after putting up with all of that yesterday. So taking pictures of kids, research the sports focusing modes that they have on the cameras, because kids are so high energy. And I'm not a child photographer, I'm a portrait photographer, and I get to bark orders and people just listen to me. And then when I'm photographing my own kids, that never happens. So I'm probably not the greatest person to ask, but I would definitely check out that constant refocusing availability that cameras have, like the AI servo and things like that for your focusing, and because your kids are just constantly going to be moving. And so if you have that camera doing what it's capable of doing, constantly focusing on whatever focus point you give it, then you're going to end up with a lot more images that are in focus.
Definitely. I'm seeing a lot of questions just about general workflow. A lot of people don't seem to have Lightroom like you do. Some people have Photoshop, some people don't. So just a general answer to all of those questions. Perfectly Clear, the newest version, now works as a standalone application. So you do not need to use it as a plugin in Photoshop or Lightroom if you don't have either of those. Even if you do have them, then you can still download it as the standalone version if you would like. So yes, it will work in Photoshop, it will work in Lightroom, but you definitely don't have to use those.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this, the bar down here that I mentioned. So, so if you did, say you took all 5 of those images of my daughter in to Perfectly Clear at one time, you can, instead of processing through Lightroom, you can choose this sync all button or sync forward, which is going to sync to the next image and take the work that you've done on one image and apply it to the next and apply it to the next, or you can apply it to all by syncing all. So that works really well. Yeah, it's all to your advantage of what you like, but also if you do get Perfectly Clear Complete, you are going to, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to get the Photoshop plugin and the Lightroom plugin as well, right?
Yes, you can choose where you would like to use it. I personally just use the standalone version. I love photography as a hobby. I dabble in Photoshop, but Perfectly Clear I use on all of my photos. I just run them through the standalone version. I have a few people asking if it's mostly for portraits. It's not, which I'm sure you can speak to that a little bit, Christina, even though that is your expertise. But some of my favorite features in Perfectly Clear, not only do they have the beautify options, but also foliage enhance and sky enhance, different things to make your outdoor portraits pop. And I know that you talked a little bit about the outdoors presets. So it's really for any type of photo, and we're just scratching the surface with portraits today.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say Perfectly Clear Complete is literally like the tip of the iceberg for portraits. When it comes to like what's possible, I mean, so I just brought up the Perfectly Clear website, but what it does to landscape photography is probably even more um, amazing what it does um, than for portraits. So yes, it does incredible things for portraits, but it also does pretty incredible things for all types of photos, and that's because it's processing 11 billion a year. I mean, it's obviously going to do incredible things on more than just portraits. Oh, look, there's my photo.
Back to some retouching questions. We do have a question about people with blemishes or redness like rosacea. How can we get rid of those without making the face overly smoothed?
So let me take a photo of my dear son. And yeah. So if I edit this one in Perfectly Clear, when it comes to blemishes and redness, the software does some really, really great stuff. Like I was mentioning, I touched upon earlier with the blemish removal slider and how it's really been improved. It does a really good job. I think it'll get you 90% of the way there in Perfectly Clear. And then if you have to do a couple finishing touches in another program, then that's fine too. But it will absolutely significantly improve the overall skin tone and texture and that kind of thing. So the snazzy, snappy presets that I created, which are going to be which you can get in the bundle, these are going to have a bunch of different options for skin smoothing, and they do include a lot of blemish reduction work as well. And so I come in here and I bring in the blemish removal slider. Let me just zoom in even further. You can see we've got some serious baby acne going on.
So cute.
And me see. I don't think it's popped in yet. No, the blemish slider needs to preview. So they were talking about, remind me of the question.
Just discussing how to edit a photo with blemishes or eczema without making it look fake.
One thing that you can do is play around with the settings in here. And remember that you want to be at 100% zoom for your images while you're working with that. But the other thing that you can do is change the smoothing type from default to super smooth or to subtle. So that's one way. When it comes to eczema, that's going to be rough patches of the skin as well. So you may need to do selective adjustments, and that might not be possible within the perfectly clear framework. What this is meant to do is it's meant to give you a really quick way to overall make quick adjustments with one click. And if you're going to have to actually go in and modify the texture of the skin, that's going to be a much higher job. But if you look at the body, for example, here, you can see how the texture and the smoothing was greatly improved, and all those veins have been removed by doing it this way. And if you need to add a little bit more of, let's say, I'm going to turn this up for visibility's sake. If you need to add some more yellow to the skin tone, maybe the skin tone is too red, you can do that by coming in and adding a foundation to this image. And you have foundation presets here in our makeup section, but then you can also go in and modify the actual color. So if you're trying to get rid of red, you would go with a foundation color that's more yellow, okay? And so by adding that foundation color, you're neutralizing the redness in the skin. So if we see our before and we see our after, the redness is gone, but we're still bringing back some of that nice color to the baby. I don't know why my Blemish tool is acting up on me right now, but that would be the one slider that would help.
Yeah. Well, everyone has been saying that this has been really, really fun and helpful. We do have a few more questions, but we're a little bit over time. So if you did not get your question answered, then you can definitely reach out to me at sarah@iq.photos, and I'll do my best to answer. Also, we have an amazing support team that is really, really knowledgeable and goes over this stuff all the time. You can contact them at iq.photos/support, and they have chat features, email, phone calls. They even have answered some of my questions in the past, so I highly recommend using them as a resource as well. But unless you have anything else that you would like to share, Christina, I would just like to thank you so much for being on this webinar with me, and thank you everyone that has attended. And again, look out for that email with some coupons in it.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thanks everybody for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Bye.